Before you have sex with someone, you may need to regulate your nervous system. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I've worked with people who have experienced abuse and sexual assault for years. And a topic that frequently comes up is intimacy, and something that I've counseled quite a few clients on, even ones that have grown up experiencing sexual abuse, sexual assault, and what have you. And I think one of the first things that you want to work on before, doing intimate acts with someone is learning how to regulate your nervous system. Believe it or not, a lot of people for many years after they've been sexually victimized are still sort of struggling with that every day, like just those triggers, those flashbacks, that fear. And I'll tell you one fear that a lot of people have that they don't necessarily think about. For example, with men who've been sexually assaulted, I've worked with a lot of men who've been assaulted by other men. A lot of them are afraid to even be in the room with another man. And even women who've been sexually assaulted, even if they want to go on to date men and what have you, they are still very much afraid to be around men. And I think when you're afraid to be in the presence of a man or whatever it is, sometimes it might be another woman that you're afraid of if you were assaulted by a woman, so on and so forth. But when you're afraid, your nervous system gets a little bit keyed up, so much so that you become very compliant. People start to fawn, they start to freeze, where they just can't think, right? Or they just say whatever, or they'll do whatever without thinking things through, and then they'll kick themselves about it later, like, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did I go along with something that I didn't want to do? What happened to me? Or they'll dissociate and things like that. So I think the first thing to do is regulate your nervous system. So one of the ways that you could do that, and when you regulate your nervous system, you focus on being present in the here and now. And one of the ways we do that in therapy is grounding, right? And so grounding, you can sit in the chair, have your feet flat on the floor, be in a very relaxed position in a relaxed environment. You can focus on 5 things you can see, things you can hear, you could taste, touch, smell, those things. So you want to focus on the senses, right? And then also focus on your breathing and slowing that down, right? And so maybe take about 5 to 15 minutes to ground if you have that. And then the other thing is practicing mindful, like what exactly is it that's mindfulness? What exactly is it that's making me afraid right now? What exactly is it that's got me a little hype right now? What set me off? What was my trigger? What sort of symptoms did that cause? Is my heartbeat going super fast? Am I sweating? Are my hands clammy? Is my breath short? Like, just focus on what set it off, and how are you being impacted? Can I not focus? Can I not concentrate? And you can sort of write those things down as a way to sort of be mindful about it. Be mindful about what your triggers are. What do I need in the moment to center myself? Do I need to just take like a break? Do I need to like stop this conversation and say, hey, I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed right now. Can we table this for now? Maybe we can come back and revisit this discussion in a couple of hours. And so that may be a way that you may want to center yourself, in addition to going to therapy and talking about it with a licensed professional. I definitely would recommend that, because a lot of times it's not just a one and done. And sometimes people, again, depending on the extent of their trauma, may have so much more that they need to unpack. It could be nightmares, it could be things like that. But again, focusing on tackling that fear of, that person, that gendered person that's in the room with you, just learning how to regulate that. And I remember that very much when I was in prison. Every man, I don't care what kind of crime they had done, or whatever. Every single man that I worked with in the prison system was afraid to be in the room with other men. So a large part of like me doing therapy groups in prison, or just even just like helping problem solve with prisoners, is helping them learn how to emotionally regulate in the other room with men, and creating an environment of safety and respect. And so the other piece of that, in terms of regulation and creating an environment that is safe, you want to talk about things like consent. You definitely want to go over boundaries, and again, just like, things that you would prefer. So consent would be things like, hey, I would, before we have sex, I prefer it if my partner wears a condom. Like, I don't have sex without a condom. That could be one thing where you talk about beforehand. And like, if your partner then says, well, I don't wear condoms, I don't believe in condoms, or, they're too tight and I can't do that, then that should be what I call a red flag. Like, we can't even move forward with that, because if that's your boundary, that's your hard line, then you need to stick with that. And then, unfortunately, some people who can't regulate their nervous systems when having these conversations, they'll just sort of give in when they really don't want to, or just go along with it, and whatever. And so that would be, a good example of, maybe you need to let's put this conversation on pause and come back and revisit it. And then you can decline and whatever. But, that's a good example of, just being able to be very clear and be very assertive with what you want and need in order to feel safe in the room. And if your partner is not making you feel emotionally safe prior to even doing anything, I wouldn't recommend going forward. It's just that simple. You don't want to share your body or have an experience with someone who doesn't make you feel emotionally safe. That experience can, and often does for many people, turn out to be a repeat abusive experience, even if it's psychologically, emotionally, or even physically, sometimes, and there's so much more I can go into about that. But I think also boundaries, like, okay, like, I don't want you to touch me here, or let's touch here, or there's certain things that I don't do, or I do. How do you feel about that? Is it okay for me to touch you here? So on and so forth. And while it may sound awkward, it may sound super weird at first, it is a very much necessary conversation. All of these things to be communicated beforehand. And so a lot of times when I tell my clients what you need before having sex with anybody to have the best experience, right? Or the experience that's most enjoyable for you after you may have been a victim of abuse, is you need boundaries, you need trust, you need respect, you need communication. And so you definitely need to start with those 4 things before you can build and go into anything deeper. And I think it starts with a conversation with who you're going to have it with before even proceeding. But you also need to be able to regulate so that you can even stay emotionally present with whatever it is you're going to do, because there's so many people that I talk to that dissociate and disconnect during sex, and oftentimes they do it to the point to where they don't even remember what happened. And I think that's dangerous. It's dangerous for a number of reasons, because if you're not present and your partner kept going, what does that say about your partner, right? That they're not connecting with you, or they didn't even notice that you weren't even connecting with them. So that those kind of things get very sketchy, right, in terms of being assaultive. But so things can happen when you're not present, you're not checked out, or it becomes a terrible experience for you all around, or even scary in some situations. So just hope that helps. And I know that I've had posts that are similar to this, but again, it comes up in my line of work and with a clientele that I work with.